This is why you need to work hard to get into a New South Wales selective high school. In 2024, it was the highest number of applicants trying to get into selective with 18,544 students. This makes it the most competitive year for this particular exam. But what does this mean for the future? And in terms of the specific numbers for students trying to get in, let's get into it. If you don't know who I am, my name is John and I'm the founder of Bangs Academy, which is an online one-on-one tutoring service that helps students reach their academic goals. One of our main goals is the New South Wales Selective High School exam. This year's exam was the last year in which it was done on paper, and there were reportedly 18,544 students who did the exam. The advantages of getting into selective is quite straightforward and clear if you've been watching this channel before. It basically gives you additional marks when doing the HSC, therefore making it easier to get into a good university or degree. The network you meet in terms of the other students that are around you are generally more academically focused, so it'll be very invaluable when heading into university and in the earlier years of high school. You also learn content at a harder and faster pace, which challenges students that are typically not challenged enough in private or just government public schools. We know every year it gets harder to get into, but why was it such a big jump in 2024 compared to any other year? There's a few reasons for this. First, the acceptance rate to join a selective high school. Understanding the acceptance rate allows students to know what is their likelihood of getting into any selective high school. It is useful and critical for students to put into perspective on how competitive it can be if they are serious about getting in and for this opportunity. The answer lies in the number of applicants applying every year. Let's look at the data. In 2019, there were 14,501 applicants. In 2020, there were 15,079 applicants. In 2021, there were 15,355. In 2022, there were 15,500 applicants. And in 2023, there were 16,630 applicants. This year, though, in 2024, as mentioned, there were 18,544 applicants. On average, there is an increase of about 400 students every year, except until this year in 2024, where there was approximately 2,000 more compared to the year before. When we think of it in terms of an acceptance rate for 2022 compared to 2024, it is a 4.3% difference. This means it is 4.3% more difficult to get into any selective high school in 2024 compared to in 2022. Therefore, parents and students will have to be more careful and diligent in terms of their preparation and making sure that it's specific to the schools that they're aiming for in order to have a good chance of making it in, seeing as it is becoming more difficult to get into a selective high school now compared to than ever before. If you wanted to calculate the acceptance rate of making it into selective, it is the number of vacancies divided by the number of applicants. For example, in 2024, it will be 4,248, which is the number of vacancies, divided by 18,544, which is the number of applicants, being 22.9%. However, the acceptance rate would actually be different when we factor in that 20% of all admissions into selective high school is allocated and reserved for the equity placement model, and 5% of students who are not able to do the exam with a genuine reason. 20% of spots are reserved specifically from students from equity groups, and these are split between students from low socioeducational areas, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, students from rural and remote locations, and students with disability. These spots are offered to equity group students who have not secured a place in the standard admissions but have scored within 10% of the minimum acceptance score from the general applicants who are not part of the equity placement model. In my opinion, this does make it relatively fairer as these students are from disadvantaged backgrounds, but I honestly think 10% is quite high. For example, if my score was good enough to get into Penrith High School, which is a fully selective high school, 10% more could potentially push me into the position of getting into Baulkham Hills. And just knowing my personal ability, I don't know whether I would have been at that level of Baulkham Hills back when I was in year 7 if I was a part of the equity placement model. It took me a while to mature, get switched on, and really put in a lot more effort into my studies. Equity students do not need to do an application or for this to be in effect. The New South Wales Department of Education has already bucketed students and know whether they identify as an equity student. So if you're an Aboriginal student, they would already know and apply the equity placement model automatically. If there are fewer eligible equity group applicants than equity spots, let's say there's out of the 20%, maybe only 14% of students get within that 10% range, then the remaining spots will go back to the general applicants, even with the flexibility in terms of their entry placement score marks. The remaining 5% of spots are reserved for students who couldn't complete the placement test for valid reasons as approved by the selection committee. This could be because of a serious accident, illness, and something of that nature. They will then consider the severity of the reason on why they could not attend the exam, and then base it off information like the NAPLAN scores in Year 5 and or in Year 3. In my opinion, this is not the best indicator for the student's potential, as for most people, they already know that NAPLAN is a significantly easier exam than the New South Wales selective test. If I had the choice, I would make it not just based off the NAPLAN score, but perhaps a few weeks after the exam, hold a remediation exam of a harder difficulty, which is given to those students who couldn't do that exam. Although there won't be as many students doing the makeup exam, I believe even the raw score might give the New South Wales Department of Education more information to work with. If they base it off NAPLAN and a follow-up remediation exam, then there's 2 points of data that they can compare it to. If it's only the NAPLAN score, it's not the best indicator because NAPLAN is just so much easier. I believe in many ways, if a student who did not have to do any exam but was able to get into James Roos or North Sydney Boys simply based on them not being able to do the test and just purely on the NAPLAN score alone, it's not the best process. Fortunately, there's only 5% of spots, so if a lot of students do not do the exam, they still won't be able to make it in. So the best advice for students is to actually attempt the exam because that's where there's a lot more percentage or possibility to get into a school, as if you don't make it in, there's only 5% of spots across all schools for you. We also know that if it was only based on the exam, it would be a 22.4% acceptance rate. However, since the general acceptance rate is only worth 75% of the spots, we can find out the number of spots will be about 3,170. This is 0.75 times 4,226, which is the number of selective spots, which is approximately about 3,170. The general acceptance rate would then be 3,170 divided by 18,544, meaning 17.1%. For the students in the equity placement group, the highest it would take is about 845 spots. This rate will apply to the subset of applicants who would qualify under the equity criteria and whether they are able to perform within 10% of their selective high school choice. For the students with special consideration who cannot do the exam, it has a 5% allocation, being approximately only 211 spots. This is a smaller subset and generally would not significantly impact on the overall acceptance rate unless the number of applicants in this category is very low and there are less than 211 students who do not end up doing the test. So what implication does this have for students and parents? By knowing the acceptance rate of a general placement student that is not part of an equity placement group is 17.1%, we know that the average rate that applies to general students going for all schools. However, we also know that students can have up to 3 options. We can increase the individual acceptance rates by being strategical with our choices. We can increase this by following the CSS framework. We want to be smart with our options, go for a range of school levels to improve our chances of getting into any selective high school. If you only go for highly competitive schools, the likelihood of getting in is much less than 17.1%. While if you only go for the low ranking schools, the chances would actually be higher than 17.1%, since there'll be lower competition and ultimately an overall lower grade required to get in. If you could not get into your first option, which is a higher ranked school, perhaps your second or third options is easier to get into, which can improve your likelihood. That is why the CSS framework is still applicable, which was, I believe, my very first video or one of the very first videos, and it's a video you should watch if you haven't already. Unfortunately, we will never know the exact number unless they reveal the precise number of students that have applied to each school and the actual cutoff mark, which will allow us to calculate with a lot more convenience and ease. As of 2024 and the time of this video being posted, they have not. They likely won't in the future either, as they're moving into a model to provide parents with more generalized information, as seen by how marks are given in bands rather than precise numbers a few years ago. Students and parents who are not tactical and not self-aware of their child's ability will feel regret regarding the outcomes if they do not make it in, as they only put in high options, so their chances are less than 17.1%, but I can't tell you how much less it would be. If parents are informed and work with the right professionals, such as at Bings Academy, students can dramatically increase their chances of getting into selective, but it is also affected by more factors. Most commonly, this is based on the backup school that the student will go to if they're not successful in getting into any selective high school. If a student's backup school is Parramatta High School, it wouldn't make much sense academically for them to put down selective school options that are lower ranked than Parramatta already, such as Granville Boys or Blacktown Girls. They can just go to their default local school, which is their backup, being Parramatta, and it's already better than these options. I hope you like this video, as it really dives into the specific numbers and puts things into perspectives for students and parents alike. With an additional 2,000 students compared to in 2023 going for the New South Wales Selective High School exam, this is equivalent to about 2 full New South Wales high schools from year 7 to 12 from the number of applicants perspective. People want to get in because the benefits are clear, and it's not an experience that private or public schools may necessarily be able to provide. It's a school system that I personally have benefited from, and a lot of my friends and peers have attended as well. And in the future, if I have kids, I'll be looking to get them into selective as well, if they have the ability to do so. If you guys had any questions, write it down in the comments down below. Please like this video, as it's very important for our growth and for other people to find out about this. And let me know if you're curious about something. Thanks, guys. Bye.